From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Ticats Today with Brayden Neville.
On today's special episode of Ticats Today, we sit down with three-time Olympian and former Ticat Jesse Lumsden to discuss his incredible journey through football and being a part of 3 Olympic events in the men's bobsleigh event. We also speak with one of the newest Ticats and Olympian, Jacob Dearborn, and Coach O, Casey Sales, and Terry Godwin discuss preparing for Montreal. It's Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, and you're listening to Ticats Today. Today's a bit of a different episode. I spoke with former Ticats running back and 3-time Olympian Jesse Lumsden. He had some awesome stories about his journey through sports and getting involved with bobsledding and doing it on the biggest stage following his football career. And I also spoke with Jacob Dearborn, one of the newest Ticats who recently took part in the 2022 Olympics in Beijing. So we have a bit of an Olympic theme to today's episode, and we will get to those guys in just a bit. But first, let's get to some news around the Ticats. Hamilton announced today that running back Tayon Fleet Davis has been released, and the team has signed Demontre Tuggle. Tuggle was previously with Ottawa, picked up 176 yards on 32 carries in 4 games and an additional 58 yards receiving. He also had 1 rushing touchdown, so a little bit of added depth for the Ticats at the running back position heading into the playoffs. The Ticats continued practice today, gearing up for this game in Montreal, and Coach O spoke about defending against a strong run game.
No, that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, they're probably going to want to establish him, whether it's early or somewhere in the game. They're going to try to establish that. They do a good job in their schemes and mixing things up, adding people to the box. So he's definitely a guy that you're going to have to, you're going to have to wrap him up, and he's tough to bring down. He runs behind his pads, falls forward. We understand that, and so we'll have our hands full, but. I like our plan. I like where we're at, the direction we're headed. But ultimately, there's the test on game day. So it just depends how many carries they want to give him. If they want to give him 20 carries, he's going to get some yards.
And then Demontre Tuggle, him coming over and getting signed. What can you say on him?
Yeah, it's just we're always looking to add depth, and you never know where you're gonna need it. And there's a guy that we competed against. From what we've heard, high character guy. He's come in willing and wanting to be here. So, it's 2 days fresh for us here with Tuggle. But other than that, we're excited that he's here. His play on the field speaks for itself.
I'm doing a story on Jacob Dearborn, but what can you say about his ability to be a multi-sport athlete and what he's been like since coming over to the team and being able to be an Olympian as well as a CFL athlete?
Well, I just love that, he's doing what he loves to do. When you're have an opportunity to compete in the Olympics for your country, that's no easy task, and there's a lot of commitment and dedication and hard work and execution that goes into that only those athletes truly know. With that being said, I loved that he didn't hesitate when called. He loves football too. He has a passion and wants to be here, and he just battles through everything. He's a student. I think probably have to give him another pen. It's probably out of ink. This guy takes copious notes. He's always preparing, always asking questions. Knew he was ultra sore just because it's a different type of body soreness that goes on there when you're playing football, and he just responds. So obviously he's a veteran of the league too. I've just been extremely impressed with just his demeanor, his want to, and his desire to win.
And finally, is that cold weather out there starting to make it feel a little bit more like playoff time here?
Yeah, absolutely. When that crisp air hits, it's playoff time, and we're excited. It's not far away now.
That was Coach O. Casey Sales is no stranger to going on long playoff pushes, having been to the previous 2 Grey Cups with Winnipeg and winning in 2021. Won't say anything more about that one, but he knows what it takes to get there, and today he spoke about what a team needs in order to make it to the big dance.
I think the number one thing is just kind of being disciplined. Throughout the season, week by week, I think we've gotten better and better. But it's just being disciplined, making the least amount of mistakes, and usually those teams are going to end up in the Grey Cup in the final game. So that's really what it is. Obviously, making your plays is kind of making your play individually when it comes up, and it's just about making the fewest mistakes. Usually those teams have the least penalties as well, and usually end up going to the end. So.
Going up against a running back like William Stanback, how do you limit his success on the ground? Maybe make him throw the ball a bit?
Yeah, like you said, just staying disciplined is one of those things that, as long as everyone's kind of in their gap and, regardless if we're stunning or, having games or something, whatever you want to call it, it's just everyone kind of doing their individual jobs. And, if we do that, if, we're perfect on play, then, maybe he'll only get 1 or 2 yards rather than 4 to 6 or something like that, or extended plays. So that's all it is. At the end of the day, is just being disciplined on our run gaps and making sure we're fitting everywhere. They have a lot of guys, a lot of movement in the backfield, kind of coming in, going out, and everything. So they got a great offense, and definitely make your eyes work in the backfield for sure, especially at the end spots. So all it really is kind of discipline. So.
The Grey Cup's already enough motivation, but how much more motivation is it to play in that Grey Cup here at home at Tim Hortons Field? Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously playing here in 21 for the Grey Cup is great, but being on the other side of it, it'd be great, especially, having the games, not having this bye week. It'd be, probably even more special to end up in the Grey Cup, obviously being our locker room, obviously being a home game. So, obviously it's just a week at a time right now, kind of same thing, just kind of making our plays and, just got to get through Montreal first. What can you say about that Montreal crowd, and especially in a playoff environment, and how rowdy they can get and how loud that place can get, and being one of the oldest stadiums in the CFL? Yeah,
it's a great crowd. Obviously, they got the noise in there with the horns and everything. So, just being there this last game, I didn't play, but just being on the sideline, obviously they get into it. So, I'm sure there will be even more people there this game. So, do or die. So they'll be pumped up.
Being a veteran presence, what are you saying to some of those younger guys who haven't been in this situation before?
Yeah, just stay focused, keep your head down, and big thing for us, as a D-line, just communicate. Shouldn't be too loud on our side, obviously being a home game for them being on offense, but just doing little things right, staying disciplined. The big thing for us, I think we took 10 penalties last week, so just if something's there, just be smart about it. Nothing after the whistle. Those after whistle ones obviously are going to be more likely those 15-yard penalties. So it's nothing to it. Obviously I was with a great team in Winnipeg when we got to the 2 Grey Cups my first 2 years, but obviously I think there's great leadership just like there was in Winnipeg, and so I'm kind of in that role now. It's kind of leading some of those rookies, right? So that's all it is. Just kind of do it a week at a time, but I think the prep week this week has been really good, so just going to go do it. So
that was Casey Sales. Terry Godwin has had a strong season for the Ticats this year. He's found himself to be a pretty key factor on that offense for the Ticats all season long. Today, Terry spoke about having a strong playoff push and adjusting to the chilly November weather, and it was a chilly one today.
For me, I mean, it's a big difference, coming from the South. We don't really get that much cold weather, but at the end of the day, it's still football, so I got to go out there and play in whatever kind of weather it is, rain, sleet, snow, hail, whatever it is, I got to adapt to it.
What can you say about the team's mindset right now heading into this first playoff game against Montreal?
Man, honestly, just this whole week, the mindset has been through the roof. I mean, at practice, guys flying around in the meeting rooms, the guys are locked in, asking great questions, getting to the bottom of certain things. Just being on all of one accordance from the top to the bottom of the guys in the waiting room, from the head coach. And I mean, you can't expect anything more than that going into this first playoff game.
Playing against Montreal, they have such a good defense. But how do you attack that defense and get some success here on offense against them on Saturday?
I mean, hats off to their defense. They have a good defense, but I know for a fact our offense is one of the best offense in this league. And once we're clicking on all cylinders, nobody can stop us. So we go out there and, like I always say, play Hamilton Tiger-Cat football and get our playmakers the ball and do what we have to do. Nobody's going to be able to stop us.
Did that last game against them give you guys maybe a little better look at what you could potentially be playing against? It almost helped having that game heading into this playoff game?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it kind of made it a big game by it being the game right before the playoffs game, because now we know what we need to work on. We're going to see what eventually they will play in against us. And, I mean, it's just things like that, almost like a sound check type of thing before the concert.
That was Terry Godwin. I mentioned earlier today's episode we have a couple of Olympians on the show, including newly signed Ticats DB Jay Dearborn, who was a member of the 2022 Olympic bobsleigh team and has really had a crazy journey through sports and a very unique one, and especially to start this all during COVID and then to make his Olympic debut in 2022 is a spectacular feat. He sat down with me today to discuss his crazy journey and being one of the newest members of the Ticats.
Yeah, it's been fast. I was out with the bobsleigh team actually out in Whistler. We were doing our preseason camp when I got the call to come out here. So I think there's about 8 days between when I was driving one of the bobsleds to playing a game here for the Ticats. So totally flipped my brain and totally new world and new city for me. And coaches and players have been really good about bringing me up to speed.
What's the difference like in training compared to they're two completely different sports, but what's the differences in training?
There's not a ton, which is why they kind of work together.
Yeah.
They're both looking for that like explosive, strong, fast athlete, which is nice because then when I'm training for one, I'm not really taking away from the other. Mm-hmm. And then like one's kind of more of a summer sport and one's a winter sport, and there's a bit of overlap in the fall, but for the most part, everything I'm doing for one sport is also helping me in the other.
At what point did that become something you were doing? Because you played football from a young age, but at what point did you start bobsledding?
It was actually in the COVID season that the CFL got canceled.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of been in touch with the bobsleigh team since like 2019. Mm-hmm. And then when the season got canceled for COVID the following year, about 3 weeks later was like the national team tryouts. So it was kind of good timing for being told we weren't going to have a season that year, and then was able to just kind of step right into the bobsleigh world and experience it for the first time.
Now, when I spoke to Jesse Lumsden, he mentioned to me that the bobsleighing team reached out to him and they reached out to multiple CFL athletes. Was that kind of the same case with you?
Mine was actually through my the strength and conditioning coach at Carleton University. He was the one that sort of put me in touch with the recruiting coordinator. It was when I was out with the Saskatchewan Rough Riders for their training camp my rookie year. I got released at the end of training camp due to injury. Mm-hmm. So I was back in Ottawa healing and kind of licking my wounds and not really sure what my life looked like now that football had at that time been sort of taken away from me. So it was the strength coach at Carleton actually that put me in touch and said, do you want to try this bobsleigh sport? And I kind of had nothing else going on, so I thought, why not? And
at what point did you realize that you were going to be on the Olympic team?
It was right down to the wire. So that was in the fall of 2021. I was still playing for the Rough Riders. And immediately, like as soon as that season ended, I met the bobsleigh team in Lake Placid and a couple races there, and then immediately shipped out to Latvia to join the World Cup team out there. And then it's down to the wire. There was a couple guys they were looking at to sort of fit that last spot, and I was able to beat those guys out.
What was that moment like when you found out you were going to be in the Olympics? Like, it must have been a crazy experience of emotions for you.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, especially because it was so down to the wire. So even after it was kind of decided, like I feel like I'd been waiting for a while and thinking about it all year, and super exciting. One of my good buddies was also named to the team that year, so it was kind of special to be sort of named together to the Olympic team and be able to celebrate that with one of my really good friends along with my other teammates. But super exciting. An Olympic dream I'd kind of given up when I stepped away from hockey earlier in life. I kind of sort of said goodbye to that Olympic dream, and then in my 20s it just sort of came out of nowhere and I was able to live it. Yeah.
And what was that moment like once you touched down finally in Beijing and you were at the Olympics and you're at the ceremony and you got that full experience of being around all of that?
Yeah, that's usually what I tell people is the opening ceremony was like the most incredible part of the whole event, aside from racing. But just to be surrounded by a couple hundred Canadian athletes and support staff, and it was a long day of a shuttle into Beijing because our village was about 2.5 hours outside, but it was a long day of just sort of building anticipation and excitement, and you're surrounded by all these other athletes, and for many of them it's also their first time there and their first opening ceremonies, and I just remember feeling like just this growing energy for like hours and hours and hours until we actually like walked out into the stadium floor, and just like a really cool feeling. Like everybody's just in such a good mood. Everybody's smiling and introducing themselves, saying where they're from and what sport they do, and like everyone's just there having the best time of their lives. So.
And what was that like to be in China for a whole different, it's a whole different world over there. And not only that, but you're competing in the biggest competition in the world.
Yeah, it was interesting. That was right during the sort of peak of COVID.
Yeah.
So there was lots of COVID protocols, which meant there weren't too many fans, if any. Most of the countries and sports kind of stuck to themselves. There was like a little bit of socializing, but for the most part, everyone's just kind of like not wanting to risk too much social interaction because like there were athletes that missed out on the games because they ended up getting COVID while they were there.
So you're extra careful. Like the whole time you're almost walking on it.
Yeah,
you don't want to miss your event to get COVID.
Exactly,
It's probably one of the weirdest Olympic Games ever. That it'll go down in history because I remember watching that. It didn't have the same feel, but for you to be a part of that, it's a moment in history, which is pretty crazy. But how do you balance the training of that with football?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, the football season, training camp starts mid-May, and you're here till mid-November. And then, like I said, like the bobsleigh season starts in September when athletes start sort of centralizing in Calgary, and it can run right through till end of February, mid-March. So yeah, it's a lot of time on the road.
Yeah.
You basically get a couple months to go home and start thinking football again and start sort of specializing for football before training camp again. But for the most part, like during the bobsleigh season, you're still trying to lift and train and sprint for the sport, but also it's, like I said, it's still prepping you for the upcoming football season.
And what's your goals going forward with the bobsleigh team and moving ahead?
Yeah, so the goal is for Olympics in 2026 again. I just started driving this year, so at the Olympics, I was one of the crew or one of the brakemen. And I just started driving this year. Don't know what that's going to be like. It's a pretty unique skill to learn, and the only way you learn is it's kind of like a trial by fire. You hop in the sled and you're going full speed, and when you make a mistake, you end up on your head, and there's no real sort of entry level way to learn the sport. So we'll see about that. If that doesn't pan out, then I'll go back to being one of the brakemen and hopping in the back of the sled. But yeah, the goal is 2026 and preparing for that. And that means like this season, like you're doing lots to prepare either as crew or as a pilot. All the skills like the push and the load. And if you're driving, obviously learning new tracks and stuff like that. But
it's a crazy thing to be able to talk to you about it and also have talked to Jesse. It's so unique. So the fact that both of you have been Ticats and you've done something like this is even more incredible. But looking at the goal for the Ticats, what does this team need to do to be successful come playoff time, come Saturday against Montreal?
Yeah, I think everybody in this organization believes that we can beat them. There's got to be a lot of guys winning their battles and doing their job and outworking the guy across from them. And I think like I've only been around the team for a couple weeks, I guess a week and a half now.
Yeah.
And just being around the organization and the coaches and the players, like they've got the right we've got the right feel to the energy and the atmosphere and guys buying in. And now it's just about execution on game day.
That was Jay Dearborn. Joining me now is former Ticats running back and three-time Olympian Jesse Lumsden. Jesse, thanks for joining me today, man. Looking at your resume and what you've been able to do is so impressive. From World Championships to Olympics to being a big player in the CFL, you've done so much. I want to start with your football career. Where did the love of football come for you?
First off, Brayden, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's funny that I have, over the past, I would say, a couple of years, I have a renewed sense of joy being back watching football, finding my place back in football. I had taken a bit of time off, and time away from the sport. But I was born into it. My dad played for the Eskimos and throughout the 80s during their championship run. I was born in Edmonton. I, spent my first couple of years alive in that locker room with, guys like Warren Moon and my dad and Dan Kepley and Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
I was always drawn to team sport. My folks, I played 1 year with the Myers Riders in Ottawa. I actually practiced with the Mosquito team, which was, I think, 10 and up at that point, but I was too young to play and my dad was coaching. So that was the year he was coaching. Jesse Palmer was a part of that team and I was just part of the practice. And then the next year they introduced a Tyke League for 8-year-olds. So that was my first year actually playing. And then my parents pulled me back out and said, if you really want to play, you can join when you get to high school. And I went to Nelson in Burlington, Ontario, a very well-known Ontario, high school football powerhouse.
Yep.
And it was the first thing I did when my first day of school is I went up and signed up for junior football. And I would say probably at that point in time, my goal was to go to the NCAA and to play professional football. Those were my two goals that I had in mind. So my path really started at that point.
At what point did you think McMaster was the right route for you close to home and a great football program, but at what point did you decide on McMaster?
I was part of a pretty heavy recruiting schedule throughout Canada. My goal still was to go to the NCAA. And funny enough, my dad actually, when he came out to visit in Calgary, the last time he was out here, brought an accordion folder of the letters of interest that I got from NCAA schools. It was funny to kind of revisit some of those. And I had a couple legitimate conversations and chats with teams like Buffalo and Wake Forest. But funny enough, Jim Caldwell was the head coach at the time of Wake Forest, and Jamie Barisi, a former Ticats offensive coordinator, was the offensive coordinator down there. But they wanted me to redshirt and come down and play potentially linebacker or safety. And I really wanted to carry the ball. That's why I decided to stay in Canada. And I had really good encouragement and support to be, there's no reason why you can't be a Canadian running back in the CIS and go play pro somewhere else. You just got to show you can play. When it came down to it, I would say my final four was UBC, St. Mary's, Western, and McMaster. My dad was really pissed that Ottawa never reached out because that's where he was at a GG and won a Vanier with them. But nevertheless, there was something about Greg Marshall and what he was trying to do with the McMaster program at the time, and the transparency in what he said as well. At that time, coming in, Kojo Aidu and Kyle Pierre were the running backs. Kojo was just coming off his Heck Crichton season. Mm-hmm. And the sage advice from many people was, you can go in and you could probably start at UBC or another school, or you can come in and learn behind two of the most productive running backs in the league, one being a Heck Crichton winner. And I was told I was going to carry the ball a little bit and I was going to play special teams in my first year. And that made sense to me, especially coming out of high school, where I still weighed, 6'2", 6'3", 199, barely 200 pounds. I needed time to mature and develop as a football player and as an athlete. And so that's what I did. Went to McMaster with the idea that I'm going to learn from these guys and work my butt off and try to make some waves when I got the opportunity to do so.
And you went from learning from a Heck Crichton winner to becoming one. What was that season like for you? You had a monster year that year, but what was going on with you that season? And do you feel as though that was kind of the season where everything flipped and you really became a guy who can produce offensively and almost looked at it as if, hey, there's more to the university football. There's a good chance I'm going to play pro after this.
It was really, so my third year was my breakout year, and we were the lead rushing team in the league that year as well. Tommy Dennison ended up winning the Heck Crichton. Selfishly, I thought and I say we as in myself, the O-line, the receivers, everybody contributes to that running game. So it is definitely a team effort. I thought we had a better performance than Tommy did that year, but needless to say, it was that third year that was really building the confidence. I was, I had able to put on a little bit of weight and some strength over those years. I put on like 5 to 7 pounds per year. So it was a nice natural progression while trying to maintain speed. And really, that was in the third year is the first time I got the opportunity to start carrying the load. And that really not only instilled confidence in me, but in confidence in our offense of what we could do as a running attack. And then going into that senior year, it's just we were grinning ear to ear. Like we knew what we were going to do. Our O-line was stacked with angry, large young men that wanted to push people over, that were really confident, that enjoyed actually telling people on the defense what we were going to be running at them, and having a good time doing it.
And then you go from having that successful career at McMaster to getting drafted to the local team first round, 6th overall, I believe, in 2005 to the Hamilton Tiger-Cats. What was that moment like for you, and to know that you were going to play in Hamilton?
So I found out, actually, I was drafted while I was on a plane to Seattle because I had signed as a free agent to go down to minicamp. And when I got off the plane, I got a congratulations text message on my BlackBerry at the time from Coach Marshall, who was my college coach as well, saying, "Congrats, good luck in Seattle. We picked you 6th overall." So it was a nice feeling to know that, again, that confidence in coaching staff that knew me as an athlete, that wanted me to be a part of that program. But he also knew that I had my sights set on what was in front of me. What I wasn't prepared for was just how that maturity level going from high school to college to Canadian college to the NFL was an eye-opening experience. And that's where I started to understand the business of the sport. There were some periods of time where I actually felt very uncomfortable down in the Seahawk training camp. It was close enough to Vancouver, and it was enough of a story where there was a lot of interesting coverage, and I felt very uncomfortable being in a media scrum surrounded by people when Matt Hasselbeck is walking by going into the locker room, and guys that are NFL legend Hall of Famers. So I needed to shut my ego down quickly and just try to work my butt off to prove myself.
I want to transition to whenever you finally got to the CFL, you got away from the NFL, and you're now playing at Ivor Wynne. What was that first moment like, that first professional moment of playing in front of those fans in Hamilton?
It was so good. It's such a good it's such a good fan base. Especially at Old Ivor Wynne, where you're so close.
Yeah.
And I remember I was so nervous on that first kickoff return. Somebody had sent it to me recently, and you could just tell. And it was a fun memory to go back to revisit. But it was so, the fact that I could have like my best friends and family be at home games is such a special opportunity. And the community within Hamilton that supports the Ticats, they're on you when you lose, and we lost a lot during that period of time. But at the same point in time, they showed a lot of love and they showed a lot of support. And it was awesome. It was so much fun. It was so cool.
And eventually, as you came into your own as a running back in the league, there was one season you were on pace for over 1,000 yards rushing. Unfortunately, you did have that injury. I believe it was the 06 or 07 season. One of those.
I was injured. Yeah, the first 2 years when I was bouncing back from NFL teams, I had pretty good half seasons with the club, injury free. And it was in 2007. It was my first full season. And that's when I really actually experienced my first season-ending injury halfway through. And we were producing and we were winning a couple games, having some good numbers, came back from that. And that was that 2008 year where we were on track. And I'll never forget Marwan Hage, who's the center at the time and still very involved with the Ticat community. He was over the moon about how our running attack was producing in the first couple of games of that season.
He jinxed it.
He'd be like, "We're going for 2,000 yards this season," and just going and it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the body didn't hold up the way that I had hoped it would. But we even though we weren't the best in the wins and losses column those few years, we had a very strong running attack with people like even. Troy Davis as a running back and the offensive line with Marwan Hage and a number of great linemen in front of us.
Do you have any stories of your time in Hamilton that you'd like to share? Like I don't know, maybe a funny moment or an in-game moment that really sticks out to you?
In-game moment would be when we played Winnipeg on my birthday. And it also happened to be, I think that was in 2007. I can't exactly remember, but it was one of the few games we won that season. I had a big game, 240, 250 yards rushing and a couple touchdowns.
No big deal.
And it was so funny because leading in it was funny leading into the game. I just felt super nauseous. Like I just felt uncomfortable. And then as we were continuing to, and I just kept like, I took some Gravol and the docs gave me on the sidelines and tried drinking as much as I could. I'm just like, I just don't feel good, but I'm running like the wind, so I can't stop. By the end of that game, the crowd sang happy birthday before we had wrapped it all up, which was super cool. And then I ended up going home and actually getting real sick. I had food poisoning. I was just building up throughout the game.
Oh no.
I unleashed everything that night and ended up in the hospital with an IV drip so I could be at film the next morning. So
that was
really
your Jordan flu game.
Yeah, exactly. So a really good early evening game turned into a really rough night. But that's probably one of the more memorable ones. Also, I would say the first time coming into the locker room, couple special moments, or in my first season, Adriano Belli, meeting him for the first time. He makes an impression for sure.
Yeah.
I don't need to go into the details of how, but he leaves a lasting impression, and thankfully, it was a positive one, and I love the guy to death. Playing against Mike O'Shea in my first season, so he was with the Toronto Argonauts, still in his last couple of years as linebacker. A lot of people don't know that I was actually a ball boy and a water boy for the Tiger-Cats when I was like 12 and 13 years old.
Oh, that's sick.
And he had played a lot of pranks on me at that point in time. So they get a chance to square up to him. And then the last, I think, really cool fact, and this is more of a testament to DA, but Damon Allen's first year in the CFL was my dad's last year in the CFL. Okay. And his last year in the CFL was my first year in the CFL. So the fact that he played with, and this has happened with Tom Brady, and you hear these stories, but he played with two generations of football players is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it just goes to show what a legend Damon Allen is and how long he was able to do that for. Going into your bobsledding career, how did that come about? Was that something you always did, or is that something that came later in life?
So that is a great question. And what I joke now when I talk about this is I trained for bobsledding my whole life without knowing it. Mm-hmm. It is such an obscure sport. I do remember getting letters sent to me from Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton and a number of other teammates at McMaster, and it was part of their recruiting strategy. They look for big, fast individuals to push a sled. So they're looking at sprinters, rugby players, football players, because what you're really trying to do is transfer power into something. And a running back, a linebacker, a DB, somebody who is accelerating through something has the ability to push a sled. So it was in 2009. I was going to go into free agency after, unfortunately, not striking a deal with Hamilton after my second shoulder surgery. And they had called me and said, hey, they had excess funding because the 2010 Olympics was coming up. They were putting on a camp. They were bringing out a handful of people in February of 2009. The team was at World Championships in Lake Placid. And at moment's notice, I said no. And I was actually in my parents' kitchen. And my dad said, why not? Go out for 2 weeks, train with Olympic athletes. You never know what's going to happen. It gets you out of the mindset. I was just so hyper-focused on getting healthy and getting back to the football field that it was probably actually unhealthy for me to be that way. Yeah. And I took a pause and went out and spent 2 weeks out there with Neville Wright, who's a national team sprinter, Chad Rempel. I don't know, is he still playing? Like,
I don't believe so. No.
If the guy has probably one of the longest standing careers in the CFL, going from an inside receiver to a long snapper.
It's insane.
It's insane. But and there was a couple other of us, and we learned how to push a sled in the ice house. And I fell in love with not only like this idea of representing Canada very quickly, but this idea of like a new team sport in a winter setting that was just packed filled with adrenaline. So from that camp, I got asked to come back out to Canadian National Championships, where I first got to ride in a sled with Pierre Luders. And from that point in time, I think Pierre really liked the way I was approaching the sport as a new person. I spent a lot of time studying the track. I spent a lot of time learning about the sport, and he knew there's somebody that I could go to battle with, and he could go to battle with. And I eventually made his World Cup team. The plan always was I had signed with the former Eskimos, now the Elks. I got injured in that first regular season game and had redislocated my shoulder that I had repaired the year before. And at that point, it was June. I needed to get surgery, rehab, stay in condition so that I could be pushing and qualifying for Olympics in November, December of that year. Mm-hmm. So thankfully with the medical team in Edmonton and combined with the team in Calgary and the backing of BCS and Florian Linder, the push coach, and Pierre as the pilot, and Matt Hindle as the high performance director, they still believed in what I could do potentially, and they supported me and helped me out and really allowed me to continue to develop myself as a crewman while rehabbing and getting ready for the second season of the World Cup season leading into the Olympics in Vancouver. So it was a lot of work that year. It was a lot of driving between Edmonton and Calgary with my dog Whiskey, but one of the marching into the opening ceremonies was one of the proudest moments of my life.
What was that like to represent your country in Vancouver? I think in my mind, that Olympics sticks out to me more than any other because it was here in Canada. But what was it like to be a part of that? And also, you were getting a lot of media coverage because you were not only a bobsledder, but you're also in the CFL. So there was a lot of media outlets reaching out to you, and you're also in your first Olympics. But what was that experience like?
Well, it was the first time I walked into BC Place and didn't get booed, so that was a nice change. There was some notice for sure. I did not let that detract me from what I was trying to do. If I'm doing something, I'm doing it in a competitive sense to win, not to participate. Going to the Olympics was never a dream. Even the idea of being able to represent my country, it was about winning for my country. So we had our sights set on winning a medal in Vancouver. We finished 5th in both disciplines. And we probably, if Jesse Lumsden of 2014 was racing in 2010, it might have been a bit of a different story because it was 9 months from the day I first touched a sled to when I was racing at Olympic Games.
That's crazy. That's insane.
It's a steep learning curve. And you look at people like Jay Dearborn, who also has a quick transition into the sport. But if you're dedicated and you're going to put the effort in and understand what you need to accomplish and are really, really driven, you'll learn it because the base foundation is there. Your strength and speed's there. The technical aspects of pushing a sled and loading a sled is about reps and doing as many reps and watching as much film as you possibly can. And that's something we're used to in football, is watching a ton of film and studying. So I think that helped a lot, but I agree with your statement. Out of 2010, 2014, 2018, nothing compares to 2010. Nothing.
Yeah.
Not even close.
What was it like? You go from participating in the Olympics in Canada, a place you're very comfortable in, to going to Sochi and to Russia. What was it like being in Russia for the Olympics? It's a kind of a complete 180 from the Olympics 4 years prior to that for you.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah.
It's a different world. And they did it was a beautiful track, beautiful facility, not quite complete, but very, very interesting. And there was a lot of geopolitical issues happening around that time as well, with Georgia and the border, with what was upcoming with the initial conflict with Ukraine. So it was not like the fanfare Olympics that we came from in 2010. It wasn't that cozy feeling. Going down to the promenade, there was very little people walking around. Russia is also a place where I believe, if I remember correctly, you need a visa to get into it. Funny enough, here's my funny story about
the Russian story.
The Russian story. We crashed in the 4-man.
Yeah,
we were on pace for a silver medal position going into day 2, and after we had completed that race, I walked with my teammates that night in the closing ceremonies, and I walked straight out the stadium. I was not going to stick around for the closing ceremonies. I was going right to Canada House to start cracking beers. That was my goal, and there was a train of us. And who do I see in Canada House?
Who?
Any guesses?
I honestly, was it an NHLer?
Andy Fantus.
Andy Fantus. Let's go.
So him and I ended up, running around Sochi, Russia for the rest of the night with a group of people and had a great time.
That's amazing. What was Andy Fantus doing what was he doing over there?
He was there.
He was just in Russia.
He was just in Russia doing Andy Fantus things.
That's amazing. The guy can do no wrong. So he can be anywhere, and I'm sure people are going to know who he is. But that final Olympics for you, did you kind of know that was going to be it for your Olympic run?
Yeah, absolutely. So I took 2 years off after 2014. I started to plan out what I was going to do after I retired from sport, started getting involved in the community in Calgary and getting involved in business. And there was still a spark inside me 2 years later. I had set out this 5-year path after 2014 that at that 2-year mark was it's like, am I doing this or am I not?
Mm-hmm.
And I still felt like I had enough juice in the tank to do it. So I started my preparation to come back, knowing that it was going to be the last one. We had a great season. We had a great 4-man crew. We set the start records in 4-man. In 2-man, my teammates, I raced with one of our other pilots, and my teammates raced with Justin, and they ended up winning gold. And unfortunately, our equipment was just not the right equipment to be running on the Pyeongchang track in the 4-man, because we blew everybody out of the water in the start gates. Myself, Justin Cripps as the pilot, Alex Kopax on the right side, and Shea Smith, who's a very decorated and extremely talented 100-meter sprinter, with our start records. I think we set a start record 3 out of the 4 heats or 2 out of the 4 heats, but Justin drove well. Our sled just was not running. And unfortunately, it just didn't. That's racing.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. And, my parents were there. My wife was doing the color commentary for CBC. She's a former bobsledder as well, won an Olympic medal in Vancouver.
Nice.
And my daughter was there at 9 months old. So it was very, very special for reasons that I'll never forget. And in a lot of ways more meaningful than, a piece of hardware that I know would sit in a sock drawer, because that's where Helen's is. But that being said, also disappointing, because we had all the pieces we needed to come out with some hardware.
You did eventually win a gold medal in Lake Placid, I believe. What was that like for you to win the world?
It was a silver medal in the race, but we ended up winning gold in the overall points that year.
Okay, gold in overall points. So
similar to like F1, you can win races, but you're also racing for the overall world championships, which are representative of the Crystal Globe. So yeah, at World Champs, we had won a silver medal at World Champs in 2012 and 2017 in the 2-man. And yeah, it's fantastic. The Olympics comes every 4 years, but we race world championships every single year. And that is the end all be all. That's where you lay it all on the line. So
that's your Grey Cup.
That's the Grey Cup every year. So, and not only to be able to win the world championships silver medal, but then also to win the overall points, which is really representative of how successful you are through an entire season. So to come away with the Golden Crystal Globe, myself and Lyndon Rush, and then in 2017, and Lascelles Brown, and then 2017, it was myself, Justin, and then Alex. So generally, you don't race with the same 2-man brakeman every single race, or you'll burn them out. Yeah. So you're kind of going back and forth.
Well, it's awesome. When I look at your career, the bio itself, and watching videos of you in the Olympics and playing football, and it just shows how true of an athlete you were. And it's been an honor to have you on the show today. And this is going to be a unique episode that I think Ticats fans are going to be very excited to hear. So thanks again, Jesse Lumsden, for being on the show today, man.
Thanks for having me back. And this is the first time I've kind of been able to connect with the Ticats again. And this is really special. I think back although a very up and down physical career with Hamilton, it was very, very special. So, and I'm actually planning potentially to come back for the Grey Cup. So, which will be an awesome opportunity.
That was Jesse Lumsden, such a cool guy, and amazing to hear his journey from football to the Olympic stage to winning a world championship, and for him to come on the show today. Also, a big thanks to Jay Dearborn, Casey Sales, Terry Godwin, and of course, Coach O. Before we go, Ticats fans, the annual Hamilton Santa Claus Parade will take place in downtown Hamilton in the heart of the 2023 Grey Cup Festival. This year, there will be a little football twist, if you will, with the addition of CFL cheer teams, and the Grey Cup trophy will also be in attendance. It's the Hamilton Santa Claus and Grey Cup Parade presented by WeatherTech, and it's happening on Saturday, November 18th. For more information, go to greycupfestival.ca/events. That's all the time for me today. I want to thank you for listening to Ticats Today.